Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. Kieran, good morning, good Sunday morning to you. How are you, Kieran?
I'm very good. We're recording this at just gone 10 a.m, so I think we're both keeping an eye on Headingley. So if this show is slightly shorter than normal, you can blame cricket.
Well, we did actually ask producer Guy if we could have a few less questions than normal, simply because we both want to see what new and imaginative ways England can find to lose a cricket match. Unfortunately, we do have a couple of news stories we need to get through, but before that, Kieran, I've got a question for you. Following your Saturday night, possibly playing to... How was the squid ceviche, Kieran?
The squid ceviche was good. The Baroness went to a gin festival yesterday, leaving me by myself.
So she was ceviche herself then, basically.
she was very ceviche by the time I picked her up. So she said, just sort out tea for yourself, which I do all the cooking anyway, so that's not an issue. And that's normally her code for I love baked beans fried in bacon fat. Yeah, that's one of my favourite bloke old school meals. It's my old man. He taught me to cook that, and he was in the RAF, way back in 50s, whenever it was. So that's one of the things he'd learned. So that had been passed on, but I decided not to go down that particular route, and got myself some squid. It was okay. I had plenty of chilli with it and sauces and so on, but I don't think I'll do it again.
You've pretty much got both ends of the scale there, Kieran, and an indication of how far you've grown from your Bermondsey roots. You had a choice between baked beans fried in bacon fat and squid ceviche. Well done. Yeah. Sugar sandwiches was my dad's favourite treat.
Oh, wow.
Treat, yeah. Another good South London boy. Sugar sandwiches and a bit of lard from the frying pan spread on toast. How any of our parents survived beyond the age of 45 is a mystery to me. Kieran, we do have some news stories, but we need to start on a serious note by sending our condolences and our sympathy to the family and friends of John Berylson, the owner of Millwall, who was killed in a car crash this week, and of course our condolences to everyone involved with Millwall Football Club. By all accounts, we've lost a decent person there, Kieran, and a good club owner.
Yes, and I think we'd said on the most recent show, we had a bit of a moan that there were too many wrong uns in football. Well, John Berylson was a good guy. He had a good relationship with the people at the club. He had a good relationship with the fan base. He had a strategy. He put money into the club. From what I understand, it's still going to be business as usual at Millwall, because he has left behind a legacy, and I think his son's on the board. But very, very sad news, and love and condolences to all at the club. And it's good to see people rallying around, because at a time when things can be so tribal and obnoxious on social media and so on, the reaction of everybody has been the appropriate one, and just all the best to his family, and they've got to go through a grieving process now, and for those people who are opportunists, just stay away, just shut your mouth, and be decent for once.
Well said. Talking of tribal, Kieran, things are all getting very tribal at Scunthorpe, to the extent, well, it almost seems like an open civil war at the moment, and it's got to be a worrying time for their fans.
Yes, I mean, if you're in dispute with somebody from a business point of view, normally the best way to do this is in a business-like way.
Yeah.
Facebook and message boards, probably not the most business-like way, but that's where we've come to now. The former owner, Peter Swan, appears to, because you can't guarantee the accuracy of posts on social media. But what appears to be a message from Peter Swan, and I have spoken to some journalists who say, well, we've received similar messages, has put up his frustrations, effectively saying that he'd agreed a price for the club, and that's not manifested itself in terms of cash. So he's frustrated. I think he was locked out of the stadium. There's some sort of dispute, and the new owner has also gone on to social media using Facebook as a means to have a go at Peter Swan, and also to have a go at fans who have been critical of some of his ideas, such as the scheme to get fans to buy. I think for £1,900 you get sort of a special ticket, and so on. And I don't think that's been as successful as had been hoped. So it's very messy. I think we are. I've got to be honest. We are constrained in what we can say in the public domain.
Yes, of course.
We've been contacted by some fairly senior people who have issues, which are I don't think will come to light. And I don't want to go and sound all sort of ITK and nudge, nudge, wink, wink, but it's not very clear what's happening there. I've been contacted by people at other clubs in the region to say, do you know what's going on at Scunthorpe, and telling us the stories. Go, blimey, right, well, that is the case. That is a cause for concern. But wait and see. Best way to resolve disputes is to talk to people and respect their views and try to come to a mutually satisfactory outcome.
Just to remind us, Kieran, who owns what at Scunthorpe now? Does Peter Swan still own the club and or the ground, or has any part of that been sold over?
Peter Swan has sold the club. He sold the shares in the club to a gentleman called David Hilton. David Hilton was previously the owner at Ilkeston Town. Right. He was previously also linked with the acquisition of Bury, but that sort of unwound itself. I think people sort of, some fans did a bit of digging, and then he says, well, I just don't need this hassle. So there has been talk about moving Scunthorpe to Ilkeston. I think that's now reversed itself. Peter Swan owns the ground, but appears to be locked out of the ground because there's some sort of legal loophole or issue arising. All very messy. All very sad as well, because the fans just want to focus on. It's not been a good few years for Scunthorpe United. And they're starting in National League North with a bit of uncertainty. They've not published their accounts, which again isn't great. There's cause for concern.
And our final story, Kieran, is one we predicted a couple of weeks ago. If we could predict with the same certainty lottery numbers and the outcome of sporting events that we do the potential route of certain financial stories, we wouldn't be doing this pod really. Producer Guy would be doing it with some random comedians. We would still be doing it for love, Kieran, but we'd be doing it from more comfortable places. But it involves Chelsea.
Yes, and I think you've got to give a lot of credit to, I think, the Chelsea Foundation and a large swathe of Chelsea football fans. There was talk about Chelsea. Originally, they were supposed to be signing a deal with Paramount Plus, and for reasons which seemed a bit strange. I think we discussed this at the time. Premier League says, "Oh no, we don't want broadcasters' names. It might upset some of our existing broadcasters." I thought, well, yeah, that does seem odd, given that the Premier League has official beer sponsors, and we got beer sponsors at other clubs and so on. But it then transpired that Chelsea were in negotiations with Stake.com, and who are not just a gambling company, but an online crypto casino based in the Netherlands Antilles, which again you go, well, that's ticking an awful lot of not particularly pleasant boxes. Nothing wrong with the Netherlands Antilles at all, except it's offshore, lack of transparency and governance, etc. And the Chelsea supporters groups, and remember we've had somebody from Chelsea on here before, made it very, very clear that they felt that such an arrangement was not in keeping with their expectations of the club. And to be fair to Chelsea, they turned around and said, under those circumstances, we will start looking elsewhere. So it looks as if Chelsea could be releasing their 23-24 shirt without a sponsor as yet. I'd still fully expect Chelsea by the time the season starts to have resolved that issue. But it does show that fan power and having, just because you feel that the game is awash with money and focused on money, it still can have some standards. So fair play to everybody at Chelsea, in my view. I think that stake.com is a grubby organisation, and I'm not opposed to gambling, and as you know, but their particular version of it is something which makes me feel very uncomfortable.
The irony is there, Kieran, that if Chelsea were to put shirts on sale without a sponsor, they would probably double or treble the amount of shirts they sell. Oddly,
yeah. I mean, there's and we have seen actually a few clubs this season are now selling shirts without the sponsor, and I think that many people would be inclined to go down that particular route, and it doesn't certainly from a manufacturing point of view, it's not an issue. I think from the sponsor's point of view, of course, they want as many billboards as they can generate, and that's why I think they prefer to have their names on the shirts. But even I think some of the sponsors realise that this could actually be a winner for us, because if they will be seen to be magnanimous by saying.
Yeah, sorry, I was going to ask you that, Kieran, because presumably then if clubs are offering fans the option of a shirt with no sponsor, that's part of the sponsorship deal itself. They won't be doing that without agreement from the sponsors, will they?
No. And ultimately, the sponsors are mainly focused on eyeballs, and eyeballs are on what's happening, A, at the stadium, and B, on television. Of course, all of the sponsors' name would be there. But given the price of shirts, somebody was telling me that the Arsenal shirt is now £80. This is for a bog standard shirt. Certainly, Brighton were just brought out their away strip. That's gone up to £60. I've seen Bournemouth's home shirt is 65. We are seeing a lot of upward movement in terms of prices. And if they are going to do that, then perhaps give fans the choice. Because some fans would say, well, actually, we do like the sponsor because having the sponsor name, because for us it feels slightly more authentic.
Yep.
And I never criticise anybody for going one way or the other, but choice is good.
Well, also, I mean, some fans, a particular sponsor might be associated with a particular playoff success or a promotion or whatever other success you wished. I was trying to think of Palace successes there, but I stopped 5 seasons ago mentally. That's how quickly I went backwards. You mentioned the phrase, Kieran, expectations of the club, and that's what I think some new club owners expect themselves, for want of a better word, because they possibly come in from owning clubs around the world, different sorts of sports club, where the relationship of the fan to the club is completely different, and then they're taken aback when fans are involved in something as basically financial decision as this, because fans do have certain expectations of their club's dignity and their club's integrity, and sometimes that's going to have an impact on the club's financial plans. But they need to be aware of that, Kieran, don't they? And they not often are.
Yes, I think we are very proprietorial.
Yes,
and that's good. I was having a fairly heated discussion on a WhatsApp group with some other fans of the club I support, and I said, well, if let's say if we were acquired by a Middle Eastern investment fund, what would your reaction be? Would you stop going? Would you still go and protest, or would you just go, oh well, it's part of modern life? And I was amazed that over half said, well, under those circumstances, it's not my club anymore, and I'd stop going. But I'm not saying that that's right or wrong, but it is indicative that I don't care when I top up my car with petrol. I don't say to myself, well, I'm supporting regimes with whom I might not see in alignment. It's the same when I shop at Sainsbury's and so on. But it's a funny one, football, in terms of there is an expectation that the club will do, for want of a better thing, the right thing.
I can imagine, Kieran, that when it comes to a heated discussion with Brighton fans about anything, you can calm it down by mentioning that you've just knocked up a little squid ceviche.
Absolutely.
That will take all the tension out of the room. Literally, a non-heated dish will take out the tension from a heated discussion. Our first question, Kieran, is about something that is really agitating our listeners at the moment. But I'm going to ask it again, if only because of the confusion involved with the surname and the first sentence. So the question comes from Anthony Sheffield. And Anthony Sheffield says, I'm a Palace fan exiled in Barnsley. So it's not often that we get three football teams' name mentioned just in the first line of a question. Our ex-chairman has spoken a few times about his belief that Prem-flix, where the Premier League create and control their own content via a Netflix-style subscribe and stream service, is the way forward. Should the EFL consider this approach in future? I'll read that again with the emphasis. Should the EFL consider this approach in future? It does seem, Kieran, the mood music amongst not just our listeners, but many football fans, is that traditional broadcasting is on its way out, and that essentially they will come into a time when the clubs will basically look after their own broadcasting. But would this be a model that the EFL should follow?
I think we could say that to a certain extent, the EFL has considered that model in the form of iFollow, which was a success, especially during lockdown. There were some teething problems, but I think they were addressed. In terms of would it work on a more universal basis, I think you've got to look at ultimately what a club's trying to do. They're trying to maximise their financial return on such an arrangement. And potentially they could generate more income. And I think that would be concentrated in the hands of a fewer clubs, and there would be definitely winners and losers. But you've then got the setup costs. The EFL is actually quite a lean organisation. So somebody would have to take a greater degree of responsibility with regards to the setup costs, to the planning. Club owners like certainty as well. And under the new EFL deal, which is coming in 2024, we're moving to 1,000 matches a season. So we're over halfway there in terms of the broadcasting by EFL clubs. And the owners want to know at the start of the season, this is how much money we're going to receive. And with the EFL deal, they've got that. And that means that they can set a budget. They can know where their peaks and troughs will be in terms of cash flow over the course of the season. If you have effectively an in-house arrangement, that could potentially cause problems. Let's say it gets to February and your team is 14th and you're playing the team that is 17th in the division in a pretty meaningless match. How many passes are you going to sell and how much revenue are you going to generate from having sort of an in-house or an EFL in-house deal? And I think that degree of uncertainty might make some owners think twice about it. But it certainly has some merit. And the one thing that we know about the world of media and broadcasting is it's in a constant set of change. And the traditional broadcasters want to protect their position. The fact that we still have, if you take a look at the United States, we've got very long deals with the likes of the NBA and the NFL and so on. And everybody seems happy. Although what tends to be the case is that the vast majority of those matches tend to be televised on a local basis as well as sort of national basis. So watch this space as always, but it has some merits. Sky probably don't make as much money out of the EFL matches as perhaps some people think. So therefore, there's not necessarily a lot of excess money to be distributed. And as I always say, when it comes to sort of deals which impact upon more than one party, there's two issues. There's A, is it going to increase the size of the cake? And B, is it going to change how you cut the cake? And that will ultimately determine the decision that will be made.
This episode of The Price of Football is brought to you by some breaking news from Manscaped. They are revolutionising men's grooming once again with the brand new Beard Hedger Pro Kit. From a beard trim to a fresh shave, the technology behind the Beard Hedger Pro Kit allows you to shape your signature beard look like never before. Now you can finally use Manscaped products to make your curtains match your carpet. And you could do that by going to manscaped.com and using code PRICEOFFOOTBALL for 20% off and free shipping.
The Beard Hedger cordless trimmer has a rotary wheel that gives you 20 hair cutting lengths, all with one guard. Plus, it's waterproof, so you can use it and shave yourself in the shower to avoid all of that hair in the sink. The titanium-coated T-blade is tough on hair, but smooth on your face, leading to single-stroke efficiency. The Pro Kit doesn't end there, though. It includes beard shampoo and conditioner, beard oil, beard balm, a beard brush, a comb, and scissors to ensure your beard is ready to impress.
The beard balm. Oh, it smells lovely. You can get 20% off and free shipping with the code PRICEOFFOOTBALL at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use the code PRICEOFFOOTBALL. Manscaped Beard Hedger, one stroke, one guard, 20 lengths. Two questions off the back of that, Kieran. Sky is involved in the first one. As you mentioned, they may not make a lot of money out of it, but they certainly occupy the moral high ground. Sky like to remind us that they are, the way to watch the EFL, and that it seems like they have a paternal arm around the shoulder of the smaller clubs. But was the move towards showing 1,000 games plus an attempt to head off EFL clubs streaming their own games?
I don't necessarily think so. There was talk about Scandinavian broadcasters coming in and trying to buy the rights.
Oh, okay.
And they were looking for more matches. I think Sky wants to position itself as the home of football. And by having a lot of EFL content, that's one way of achieving that. The additional money is going to help clubs. We'll have to wait and see the impact on attendances. But I was looking at some data earlier this week, and as far as season ticket sales are concerned, the clubs in the Championship, they're fantastic, absolutely fantastic.
Interesting.
So there seems to be a bit of a feel-good factor with regards to football at present, and people, a lot of people are cutting back on some things, but football still has that sense of community. That it's the last of the discretionary things that you want to give up, because you might go for fewer trips to the theatre or fewer meals, or you might have 1 pint less when you go out and so on. But football still has that unique sense of, it gives you a discussion with your mates. It gives you a sense of identity. And, after what's been a pretty tough few years, it's a place of escape. I'm one of the most meek and mild people on the planet, but when I go to a football match, you do transform. And I think it's actually can be good for you in a way, provided, of course, you keep it on the right side of the boundary.
Kieran, I've seen some of your WhatsApp posts with your Brighton mates about the best way to prepare couscous. I wouldn't say meek and mild. It's a description I would use there. Also, you mentioned Scandinavia, which is again is an indication that we've been married way too long, because my second point was about, I was going to say abroad then, as a general euphemism for not being in. Off the top of your head, Kieran, what's, in terms of, say, the top 5 leagues in Europe outside the UK, what's their issue on streaming? Are they still sticking to more traditional broadcasting deals, or is streaming the way forward in Germany, Italy, France, Spain, etc.?
No. The individual countries are still selling their rights, and therefore, I think we're going to be locked in for probably towards the end of this decade. But as technology changes, expect new things. We've seen Apple have just brought out some form of product which you wear on your head, which looks like a set of enhanced ski goggles, but that can give you an immersive experience from your lounge or kitchen or wherever it is that you're watching the match in terms of VR and AR. And I think the football teams will be watching this with a degree of close attention to see. The ideal position is we can't get more than 30, 40, 50, 60,000 people into the football stadium, but can we get to the football stadium in a realistic format into the eyes and ears and minds of many people? And if so, if you can have a 3D experience completely immersive, how much would they be willing to pay for that?
Okay, I've watched enough episodes of Doctor Who, Kieran, to know that immediately putting on a 3D headset to watch a football game marks you out as the first victim of that week's episode. Because if AI is going to get you, that's the way they're going to get you, Kieran.
It is.
Talking of showbiz and entertainment, I meant to say at the start, I've got some good news for you. We, my views, I think, Kieran, although I don't share them often on this show, on rom-coms.
Yes.
I'm a Ginham.
Yes.
I really genuinely can't stand. I start twitching at the mere mention of Love Actually. So it was with some reluctance that I was persuaded by Ali to sit down and watch a modern rom-com last night called Rye Lane, which is set in Peckham, which is brilliant. It's fantastic. But one of the lead characters is an accountant, a young man who's chosen accountancy. And at one stage, someone refers to the fact, well, you very rarely see a sexy accountant. And both Ali and I went, Kieran Maguire. So, but I'm afraid you need to watch Rye Lane, Kieran, because your state, albeit it's fictional, but your status as world's sexiest accountant is under fire. Anyway, our next question, Kieran, we are so easily distracted, aren't we, on this show? It's just, I'm distracting people by saying how easily distracted we are. Our next question comes from Ryan Ford. And Ryan Ford says, I've been doing some maths. Now, a spoiler alert for those of you out there who love maths. Ryan, when he says some maths, is exaggerating a little bit.
He's used both hands.
He has used both hands, but Ryan is talking a good fight on the amount of maths that he's been doing. But this is a great question. Ryan says, I've been doing some maths. Across the last 4 Harrogate Town games I've attended at home, I've seen an average of 7 footballs go over and out of the stadium. Who pays for these balls, and does each EFL club get an allowance? I like the fact that Harrogate Town are just going, there's another one gone out of the ground. Should we go and find it? No, leave it to the local population. They can play football with it. But it's a question that I believe came up very early on in the pod, Kieran. But who does pay for those balls? And I've been at an international game, Kieran. I was in Liechtenstein, Latvia, which I mentioned before, when the ball sailed over the actual ropes. It wasn't a stand, sailed over the ropes and went into a pond. And bearing in mind that was an international game, it took the UEFA official a good 30 seconds to come up with another ball, because the people of Liechtenstein may be good for offshore banking, but they're not particularly, they're clearly reluctant to spend €30 on a new ball.
If only it was just €30.
Oh, of course.
Yes. I've been researching this morning, and you know that we have the secret broadcaster amongst our canon of friends, where we also have the secret ball person.
Do we?
We do. So I have been a busy bunny, and I'll say that it's no more than it's a well placed source.
Okay.
The EFL have a deal with Puma. I think it used to be Mighty, didn't they? But Puma have taken over as the official ball supplier, and I think they have it for some other competitions as well. And from what I understand is that an EFL club will get 120 of the highest grade balls during the season, but they also get 10 of the winter balls. And you and I are both old enough to remember when Match of the Day would take place and Barry Davis would come on. Oh, they're using the orange ball today. You can tell winter's here. Yes, it's 120 of the match balls for the traditional balls, and then you've got the luminous balls, and I think there's 10 of those that are given. So those are, and I don't know whether perhaps they ought to give slightly more of those to clubs which are further up north because the weather tends to be a bit bleaker. And perhaps they ought to go and send some special ones to Harrogate, which have got sort of those mini chips inside, so that they can locate them when they disappear out of the ground. But I thought, well, blimey, that's if you multiply that by 72 clubs, that's an awful lot. And I contacted our source. I said, what's in it for the manufacturers? Because they're effectively giving these away for nothing. So, well, if the clubs do want more balls, effectively there'll be some sort of mates rates arrangement. And I thought, well, do these actually sell? And apparently, the World Cup balls, the Champions League balls in particular, Premier League balls, EFL balls, they sell in huge numbers in the retail market. So they are winners. Yeah, I was surprised. I just thought, ball's a ball. Yeah. But perhaps it's something we should have investigated further in the book, in unfit and improper persons, in terms of, do we need to upgrade our balls?
Oh, don't put that doubt in my head, Kim. We've got another proofread to come. Did we mention ball? Yes. If Barry Davis, if I was watching Match of the Day in the 70s and they had the luminous balls and training shoes because it was so cold, I would lose my. Yes. I would get so excited. And also, producer's guy is listening. Can you make sure we get double rate from Manscaped for this one? Because they're really getting their money's worth out of this, aren't they? Leon Kingmar. How much do these balls retail for, Kieran, by the way? Do you know?
I think the official prices, they can be up to £100 a piece.
Can they?
For a I mean, you can normally get. It's a bit like when we've just been talking about football kits in respect of Chelsea. You can normally buy last year's shirt at a significantly discounted rate. Well, you can probably buy last year's official ball for £30 to £40. But if you want this year's effort. And it's always been the case of remember every World Cup, the ball is rounder.
Yes,
and you always have a goalkeeper moaning. It's part of football tradition at a World Cup to say, the balls are they're doing strange stuff.
Yeah, they're too round.
Yeah,
too round. Such a thing as too round. Rugby. I hope you're paying attention to this. We do mention the price of balls in the book, Kieran, right at the start, at sort of Sunday League level.
Yes.
And that's probably enough balls now, Ed. Leon Kingmar has our next question, as I began to say earlier before yet another distraction. Leon says, I have a question about the stock market within football. How come only a small proportion of the bigger clubs list themselves on the stock market? If this is beneficial for those clubs, why do not more clubs use this strategy to earn big capital? I understand there are certain requirements and that listing yourself could be costly, but surely there's a good opportunity to earn big money. And oddly, Kieran, we started this pod talking about Millwall, and they were a club that were once listed on the stock exchange and then came off just purely because of the admin cost, basically.
That's right. Millwall, Hearts, Spurs, Sheffield United. There was a long, late 80s, early 90s, there was a drip of clubs who were wanting to get access to capital markets. But I think the experience of the vast majority of them was negative. I mean, the benefit of as Leon was hinting at, the benefit of getting a stock market listing is that you get access to fresh money. But if anybody who monitors social media is no doubt aware of this, what an awful lot of fans seem to think in is that fresh money should simply be spent with no connection to a financial return. All that these particular very angry people on social media seem to want is to spend more money, and any owner that doesn't do it, there's an awful lot of if you go onto Twitter and so on and just type in hashtag FSG out, you'll find that there is a significant tranche within the Liverpool fan base who seem to think that only spending £100 million by the second week in July is a lack of ambition by the club owners, which doesn't necessarily seem to add up to me. If you are going to the markets, then you are beholden to the markets, and the markets are looking for a financial return. There are much higher compliance costs because you've got to not only comply with company law, but you've got to comply with the rules of the London Stock Exchange or the New York Stock Exchange, and the little books of these organisations are not very little. You've got to employ bankers and accountants and lawyers for your initial public offering, your IPO. So all of those costs add up, and then, if you're not making money, the owners become effectively answerable to the markets. Now, one of the things we've noted in respect of football in this country is that you might not like the owners at times, but ultimately they're answerable to themselves. And you think about the amount of criticism that's been levelled at some, they just go, "Yeah, don't care. I'm still in the director's box, and I'll continue to do what I consider to be right." That becomes slightly more complicated if you've got a much broader investment base, and the reason why the Glazer family, to a large extent, have got away with it as far as Manchester United are concerned, is that they set up the club as a company in such a way is that for every share that they own, they have 10 votes. And for every share that, if you or I had bought them, we'd only get one vote. Yeah. So therefore, they are able to achieve a greater control, and they can effectively quash dissent. These things can be successful. If we take a look at Celtic's share price, that's up 19% since the start of the year. If we take a look at Manchester United's share price, that's up 124% compared to where it was 12 months ago. So there are financial gains and returns to be achieved. But I've just mentioned there Manchester United and Celtic, both of which are big brands. And I think, again, this is what Leon was hinting at. Why aren't more big clubs on the markets? It's because the owners, Abramovich didn't want anybody to tell him how to run Chelsea, so therefore he wasn't interested. It's the same with Mansour. It's the same with the new people in Newcastle United, and we've seen that in many European countries as well. There are a few. Ajax, I think Dortmund are on the market, Juventus are on the market, but they're having a terrible time. It doesn't necessarily improve things, and if you're getting more money from shareholders, then you are answerable to those shareholders as well.
Yeah, your recent analysis of the FSG investment into Liverpool caused a lot of debate on social media. Good debate, I have to say, but it was an interesting one. So a club like Spurs, then, who you would think would be an ideal club to be floated on the stock exchange. They're not on the stock exchange, are they, Spurs?
No, but they were.
Yeah.
There was a big who and indeed a ha. And I immediately think of Al Pacino as soon as I say those words. I can't for some reason. But they went back on. They went back into privacy. Sir Alan Sugar was involved. We've now got Enoch involved. I would say that Spurs would work as a stock market listed company because they are run as a business first and a football club second. But that in itself creates tensions. You've only got to look at the relationship between Daniel Levy and the Spurs fan base to know that it's not a particularly fragrant one.
So how then, when Spurs delisted, would that have cost them money? And if Spurs were to float again, would that cost them money as well?
Yes, when the club delisted, effectively, you have to give people the opportunity to sell the shares, which I think did happen. That was exactly the same when Manchester United delisted, right. And then they've gone back on the market again. So that there are fees that you have to pay. There's fees you have to pay to the institution on which you're listing. You will have bankers working out the initial share price, so that you have to pay those. The lawyers and the accountants will rock up and say, "Hi, we think we deserve something as well," just because we're fun-loving professionals.
Is there? I know this is a proper rookie question, Kieran, but that's partly why I'm here. If a football club or indeed a business did want to float on the stock exchange, are the stock exchange able to say we don't want you?
The stock exchange would do cursory checks. Now, it could be that there might be certain industries that the stock exchange doesn't want to get involved with, but it does have a handbook. Right. So there are barriers there which potentially could prevent an institution coming onto the market if in the opinion of the New York Stock Exchange or the London Stock Exchange, wherever it's going to be, it would be to the detriment of the reputation of the institution.
Okay. Our next question, Kieran, comes from Jane Jackson. And again, it's a regular clarification that we get from fans. And I'm happy to ask it again, purely because I've never fully understood the answer to this question. And Jane Jackson says this: do Premier League / Championship yo-yo clubs end up with loads more parachute payments than teams who go down but don't go straight back up again? Are they applied cumulatively?
No, Jane, they're not. The parachute payments are given to those clubs who have been relegated and who are still in the EFL. If that club subsequently does trampoline back to the Premier League, then those payments are kept within the Premier League and distributed to its members. Now, I think this is an issue which I think, emotionally, I think it grates with many people. If we take a look at what we've just seen in season 22-23, Sheffield United have been promoted and Burnley have been promoted. And those two clubs, I think they would have received something in the region of £50 million between them had they been back in the EFL this season. So that £50 million now goes back into a central pot held by the Premier League, and it's divided equally in effect between its members. So therefore that works out as £2.5 million per club. So it's in the Premier League's interests of the existing clubs to have yo-yo clubs, because it increases, £2.5 million especially for the likes of the club that we support. Yeah, that's the vast majority of a player's wages for a season. So you can see why there is such consternation about parachute payments. Some of the unusual theories that I've observed is that it's deliberately done because it's a way of keeping money within the Premier League. I'm not really certain that is the motivation myself. I personally am a great believer in compromise. I'd split the money 50-50. Half of it goes to clubs in the EFL, half of it goes back to the Premier League, and then everybody can benefit from the success of these clubs when they do return. But parachute payments are not the only reason why clubs come straight back up. There's a reason why you'd expect Leeds and Leicester and Southampton to be pretty close to the top of the championship table in 23-24, because they're clubs with big fan bases, and they've got within their squads players who have been playing at a higher level than the championship in recent seasons.
Yeah, in that spirit of compromise, Kieran, if you do ever invite me for dinner, can we compromise and say I'll have my squid cooked and you can have your squid dipped in a bit of lime juice? Yes. I only asked that question because I'm mentally trying to work out whether £2.5 million would pay the wages at Palace every season, would it?
Palace's average wage is, it's around about 57, 58. So, yeah.
Okay.
About that. You've got some players on considerably more than that, as we both know.
Well, we've got one who's freed up quite a lot of money by not signing a new contract. John Hedges has a classic pre-match pub discussion question for you, Kieran, and I know how much you like researching these questions. Finley likes the idea of a classic pre-match pub discussion question.
No, that's the Baroness. Very quietly coming into the room. I'm
not surprised at the amount of gin. Can she hear this? Take the headphones off, Kieran, so the Baroness can hear this telling off.
No, she's looking very chastened at the thought that her gin consumption will have impacted upon her ability to open a door.
Well, yeah,
on a Sunday morning.
If only she'd stuffed herself full of squid ceviche before she went out, she wouldn't be feeling half so bad. John Hedges says, if you wanted to own a League Two club, which of the following options would be cheaper? Buy an existing League Two club, or buy a club in the National League North or South, and then finance that club sufficiently to get promotion to the Football League?
I personally would acquire a club in League Two. Now, you'd have to pay a higher price for that. But the losses in the National League, I mean, National League North is quite significant losses there as well. But the losses occurred in the National League are higher on average than they are in League Two. And I think we mentioned on the show a couple of weeks ago that I think Stockport lost somewhere in the region of £4.5 million in getting promoted. Salford City, when they were promoted from the National League, they lost around about 2.5. So we normally are talking 7-figure losses. So you'd have to effectively factor that in. It's a very competitive league. It's great to watch as well. You know, for international breaks, go and watch non-league, folks. It really is. It's great fun. But I would probably go for a League Two club. I'd be a bit loath to say which league club because I'm a bit compromised on that at present. But so I'll say no more than that.
Okay. I think it's a hypothetical question, Kieran, but fine. I suppose John's question, the answer depends whether you're asking it to a local businessman or to two Hollywood superstars as well, doesn't it?
There is, yes. I mean, if what we have seen at Wrexham is absolutely fantastic in terms of increasing the profile and giving a boost for a town which has had been in pretty hard times. There's a lot of competition in the National League. So if you buy a club in National League North, first of all, you've got to get up. And I know I've seen some of the quotes for wages for clubs in just the National League North this season, which have been quite high. We've got clubs in National League paying wages of between £4,000 to £7,000 a week for individual players, and this is for a league which really doesn't have a TV deal as of much note. So that's why I'd probably go for League Two, but it's National League, tough division to get out of. You know, Wrexham and Notts County were both outstanding last year, but only one of them is guaranteed a place in promotion. Then you got the lottery of the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that's going to change in the next couple of seasons. I mean, this is a very different answer to this question, Kieran, than if we'd been asked it 20 years ago, because there won't be many teams in National League North or South, which is essentially League Division 6, that aren't fully professional. I'd hazard a guess to say there's probably only one or two that even at that level aren't fully professional.
Well, I think National League North, there's a few more. National League South is still mainly part-time.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
From what I understand. There is a geographical split there. I think we're trying to get our friends from the EFL to come on the show. So perhaps one of the questions we will ask them is, what's their position with regards to 3 up, 3 down from the National League to the National League. So it's the National League to the EFL League 2. It does allow their members to get back that much quicker in many regards. So there are positives as well as negatives, and it increases the level of excitement.
Yeah, I'd be interested, because I did do some research for the book about why, because there are, even as I was asking you the question, I realised I knew the answer, because like I say, I've been writing about it, and there are more professional teams in the North than the South. But for the life of me, I couldn't find any particular reason to explain that. So if anybody out there is either an economist or a football historian who may have a theory, or indeed the leading financial football expert in the country, Kieran, I'd be interested to know what that theory is. But in the meantime, we have our penultimate question, which comes from Thomas George. And I'm very interested in the answer to this question, Kieran. Thomas George says, last season, Newcastle ladies training kit was sponsored by sportsbreak.com. Would the income from that deal contribute to the FFP calculations of the wider club? And again, this is a question that if you'd been asked this a year later would be different, because we've talked about Newcastle ladies going fully professional, even at their low league position. But does that sponsorship money work towards FFP for the Newcastle United as a whole?
Not as such, and the reason for this is that the losses incurred by a women's team are exempt from financial fair play calculations. So if you are getting a new sponsorship deal for a front of shirts, that will reduce the losses. So it will help from a financial point of view, but it won't make a difference in terms of the overall financial fair play scenario, because it doesn't matter whether that deal's for £100,000 or £1 million or whatever it's going to be. We are seeing substantial changes in terms of the cost of running women's team. There was an article in The Athletic a few days ago about Arsenal's new signing Russo potentially could be the first £1 million footballer in terms of earnings, which I think is which is really good from the player's point of view. Utilising both commercial and salary and so on. But in the case of Newcastle, they weren't even affiliated to the sort of Newcastle United as we know. I mean, the club was actually formed in 1989. It then sort of started a relationship with Newcastle United's men's team, as it were, in 2016, and now it's gone completely professional. So watch this space. Their first match at St James's Park, this was in, I think, the fourth tier of women's football, attracted a crowd of 22,000, which is fantastic.
Yeah, and I'm guessing whoever sponsors the shirts and the training kit of Newcastle ladies in future will be spending a lot more money than they have done in the past, won't they?
Yes.
Our last question, Kieran, is less of a question, more of an existential howl, basically. And I don't know if you can answer this question, and I'm guessing that Phil Chater, who asked the question, is a Coventry City fan. But Phil Chater says, have there ever been two worse decisions than Coventry City moving out of Highfield Road to the Ricoh, and then Wasps Rugby Club moving from London to the Ricoh, and then buying the stadium? I mean, the second one of those, I mean, it's fine to move stadium within a certain locality, but to move to a city that's an hour and 20 minutes away on the train did seem a strange one at the time, albeit they were driven by financial constraints even then. But you can trace Coventry's travails, can't you, really, to that first moving out of Highfield Road. Although at the time there are many Coventry fans, I know two friends of mine who said it's about time we left Highfield Road and it expanded our horizons.
Yes, I think the problem that Coventry City had with Highfield Road, and I'm old enough to remember going there in the 80s when in the shop is all these seats. This is outrageous. I can't be an oik. But they were constrained geographically in the sense that the ground was hemmed in, so therefore the opportunities for expansion weren't there. Coventry City were in the Premier League and the old First Division, its equivalent, for 34 years. And I think they got into that scenario where they felt that they were never going to be relegated. And the move to the Ricoh was on the basis of continued involvement in the Premier League and the revenues that would generate. And when they were relegated, it was worst case scenario. It couldn't have happened at a worse time. Their income went down. Their plans for the Ricoh effectively had to be curtailed. The club was losing huge amounts of money on the back of that. Initially that meant that their negotiating position was very, very weak, and that's been exploited. And then we've got the issue with Wasps, and I've just written a paper with my colleague Christina Philippou from Portsmouth University, where we were asked to do an analysis of rugby finances. And I knew that they weren't good, but once we'd written this thing together, we're going, Jesus Christ, this is, at least in football, what we refer to as the bigger fool theory, in the sense that if a football club's losing money, there's always some sucker that will come along to say, well, football is a global sport. It's my opportunity to get my name in the papers. I think I'm really good, and I think I can get this club into the Championship or the Premier League and all the attention that brings. Well, that's not the case in rugby. So when you've got clubs that are struggling, there's a much smaller pool of fools, for want of a better phrase, and that's why we've seen 3 rugby clubs go out of existence. In terms of Phil's question, has there ever been a worse decision than Coventry City moving out? I would say Brighton's decision to release Roy Keane because he was too small is probably up there after he came across for a trial.
The rugby, I mean, I'm not the world's biggest rugby fan, Kieran, but I absolutely respect the fact that there are many people who feel about their rugby club the way I feel about my football club. But part of the issue with rugby surely is that, growing up in to all extents and purposes, Irish grammar school in South London in the 70s, London Irish then, one of our PE teachers played for them, but they were essentially a volunteers club. No one was being, it was a social club. It was a decent level rugby club. And if you'd said then at some stage London Irish will be a professional rugby union team playing in front of however many people it was at wherever, Reading for a long time, you would have laughed at them. So it almost seems as though rugby overreached itself, looked at football going, well, that's professional. Look what it's done for them. And it was never going to have the same pull. You were never going to attract as many people to watch rugby games as you were to watch football games. And also, we talked about the expectation of fans before. Rugby fans are a very different beast to football fans, aren't they? It's much more of a social thing. I know there will be many rugby fans going, it's not the case. But for many rugby fans, it's much more of a social event. The idea of professionalism wasn't something that they were clamouring for, it seems to me.
That's right. I mean, I would, having done this work and I'm involved in something else with another government agency at present, sort of the conclusion that I'm reaching is that rugby union in particular has become professional in terms of its cost base, but still amateur in terms of attitudes in the boardroom and its ability to generate revenues. And you put those two things together, and that's not good. I mean, if you compare it to rugby league, which operates a really tightly controlled cost control measures, rugby league is far more professional in its outlook, and also I think in its realistic expectations than rugby union. But this is the price of football rather than the price of rugby.
Speaking of government agencies, Kieran, I don't think it's a secret, is it, that you were asked by Interpol to talk to them? Was it?
No,
you mentioned that.
No.
But what we don't think we mentioned was that you and I and the Baroness bumped into each other in their London's Covent Garden on Thursday, because you were going to one play, I was going to another, and we had time for a quick drink. And I was very impressed when Gail revealed to me what your attire was, Kieran, for said Interpol conference, when I was expecting that maybe you'd be wearing a suit and tie. But would you like to share with our listeners what it was you wore to talk to Interpol?
Well, one of my favourite bands is the New York band Interpol, who I'm actually seeing at Somerset House on Monday night this week. So she normally monitors me very carefully because what I think is wry and amusing normally gets the big finger of disapproval from the Baroness. But as she was planning a trip to some gin festival, she was somewhat distracted. So yes, I rocked up in an Interpol t-shirt and there were chief constables from the UK, from Scandinavia, from elsewhere in Europe, from Australia, from Ireland. There were lots of people from quite senior agencies. There's this bejesus idiot talking about amortization and how to cook the books. But it worked out ridiculously well for me because I think, as I said on the other day, as I finished the show, Andy Pilley went down for 13 years for fraud, and I've just been saying, well, this is a tick box of what the owners are looking for, and that was a very fortunate coincidence.
Yes, I understand your presentation was a great success, but it all the way to the theatre I was going to, I was just laughing at the idea of this sitcom shot of panning across the stony faces of senior uniformed officers. It's this bloke in an Interpol, because one of them would be going, I didn't even know we did T-shirts. This is surely drawing attention to ourselves in a way we wouldn't want to happen. But I like to think there was at least one. I like to think there's at least one cheese constable there who just went, yeah, good man. Good man. Thank you to everyone who's donated to the pod via our Patreon page. If you'd like to make a small monthly contribution even as well to the pod, that'd be very kind of you. And you can go to patreon.com/priceoffootball. If you have a question you'd like answered on the show, email us at questions@priceoffootball.com and we will ask it on our next Questions pod. We'll be back on Thursday with I think our last news pod before a 2-week break, but we do have podcasts for you, don't worry, including our first ever nostalgia one. In the meantime, though, I shall hand you over to Mr. Kieran Maguire for his customary farewell.
Well, thank you, everybody, for your support of the show. And if you want to listen to the show without adverts, I think you can do that via going down the Patreon route. But equally, some of you enjoy the adverts and it gives you a break on your walk and your gym and so on. There's other ways in which you can support the show, and that's to give us a review. Go onto an app, give us a review. Doesn't matter what you say by all accounts. I'm going to see Blur later today, so therefore you could even say you would rather have the show presented by Damon Albarn and Damien from The Omen. He would be an interesting club owner, wouldn't he?
That would be. I think Damon Albarn would be one of the few hosts that are actually cooler than the two original hosts, Kieran.
Yeah, he's brilliant. Brilliant.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
The price of football. The price of football.